Hello, good evening. Welcome to Glasgow Rangers Nation podcast live with me, your host Owen. No Victoria tonight. She's not feeling too great, so she's not been able to join. But I am joined by the two Scots, Scott from Inside Ibrox and Scott from SM Media. Scott Mckay. Sorry if I mispronounced that. Inside Ibrox, how you doing, buddy? How's your day been, and how are you feeling after last week?
Aye, not bad. Thanks for having me on. Still quite sobering, to be honest. The result's not really set in. That's what I was saying to you before the podcast came on. When you're trying to do a wee bit of work on the kind of result on Sunday, it's hard to take the emotion out of it and write something with a wee bit of a balanced viewpoint. But aye, we're here to face the music and get a good chat and go.
So, Scott, how you doing? How's your week been? Or how's your weekend been? And how's last week been for you?
Personally, very good. But watching football, in terms of watching Rangers, it's kind of turning into the same old, isn't it? It's first Old Firm, Rangers lose to Celtic, and they're on the back foot, and that's sadly been the reality for the past couple of years.
Absolutely. I think we all went into last week with just such high hopes and such positive thoughts and hopes that we could get, two positive results, or at least the PSV game, make it competitive, and then obviously hope that we could beat that lot from across the city. And it's just gone so wrong, hasn't it? And I've felt honest with you, since Sunday, I felt so deflated. I felt like someone's kicked me in the ribs. And just, I don't know, it's been awful, really. To be honest with you, absolutely awful. Let's get on with it. We're going to touch obviously on what the two guys do sort of towards the end of the pod, and get them to talk about and plug what they need to, what they do. So you guys know where to go and find more of Scott and Scott's work. But let's get straight down to obviously talking Glasgow Rangers, and I'll start with you, Scott Mckay. So far, we know we're at the international break. What's your take on the season so far to this point, before we sort of get into specifics of the last sort of couple of games?
Poor. Not Rangers standard, not acceptable. It's slow-paced football. It's stagnant. We're relying on two aging fullbacks to create chances via crosses, and we've seen us all too often. The pressure's really on the manager now. Going by the rumours today in social media, I think he's still in a job. But there's not really much to look forward to. I'm not really feeling optimistic. The weekends kind of took any optimism I had and took it away. All I've got to say is we need to win that League Cup.
It's just been shocking. Absolutely, yeah. Scott from SM Media, from Rangers Assessment, what's your take on the season so far?
I don't think Scott's wrong what he says. I think a summer that promised a lot of optimism and big money signings, and there was big money signings. There were reasons to be excited. A lot of forwards coming in, but Kilmarnock onwards, like I just don't see a system that we'll get into. Obviously, tactically, I want to kind of talk about tactically about how the game on Sunday went, because I thought it was very interesting and very weird how the game went, to be honest. But overall, we're something like 9 games in. I think nine competitive games I think Rangers have played. If it's not 9, it's 8. And there's been 8 different 11s, there's been 8 different front lines, and there doesn't seem to be a rhythm, and you need to have that early on. And I understand the thing of, yeah, he's still later than the best team. He's still finding the best version of these players. Some of these players need to settle in, and I get all of that, and I kind of take it on board. But you should see something. You should see some sort of formation, identity. Identity is the word in football now, and I don't see an identity. I don't think the manager knows the identity, and that really concerns me, because I see what all these signings bring. I see individually what Lammers can bring, Dessers can bring, Danilo. It's not clicking together. And when you have a rebuild like that, you have to bring in players who fit a system. You can't just bring in players and just hope it sticks, just throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. That's what it looks like to me so far. It's been 8 different front formations. There's no consistency, there's no rhythm, there's no width, there just seems to be nothing. And already Celtic have dropped points and you're 4 points behind them after 4 games. That's terrible. And out the Champions League. And I don't care what MD says, and I was quite guilty of this at the start. I made a comment when we were going. I think Scott might have been on when we talked about this. I said, if Rangers don't get into the Champions League, it isn't a disaster, but you have to start domestically really well, and neither of the two have happened, and it puts Bale under massive pressure, and it takes away now the Champions League. If you'd won the first 3 games going into yesterday and went out quite respectfully to PSV, I think the fans would have been quite content with that. But you've lost to PSV. You've got to do in Eindhoven. You lost your first game to Kilmarnock, and then you lose the first game against Celtic, and I think it's just bad. And I just think it's a big ask to come back from that and get the fans to think you can come back from that.
Yeah, I think for me, I agree with what both of you have got to say. It's been so poor so far, and if I could sit there and over these, you said the 9 competitive games and 13 games altogether, if you include pre-season, if I could see a vision, if I could see an identity, if I could see a shape emerging and a pattern of play emerging, then I'd be encouraged. But at the moment, I'm just seeing nothing. I'm seeing no pattern of play. I'm seeing no style, no vision. Times, I don't know what you two think, but the players look like strangers. They look like they've kind of never worked together ever before in their entire lives. It's worrying. I mean, I don't know if you've both got Scott from inside Ibrox and I were talking before we came on air, and we said CJ Novo mentioned an interesting stat yesterday. If you include all the games we've played so far, including pre-season, we've played 13 in total. We've won 5, lost 5, drawn 3, scored 20, conceded 20. Scott from Rangers Assessment, what's your opinion on that? I mean, I'll come back to you, Scott. I know what you said off air, but Scott from Rangers Assessment, what's your take on that?
I didn't even think of that, to be honest. That says to me, when you've scored 20 and conceded 20, what's the big problem there? The defence, and I've said it for years, that's the same defence with the exception of John Souttar than it was 4 years ago, and Michael Beale's expecting the same defenders to be at the same level they were when they won the league. And I'll be honest, I don't think they were great then. To be honest, I don't think we've ever been on record saying Tavernier's a brilliant defender. I think Goldson can be easily caught out. Goldson brings a lot to the side. Barisic, I've made my feelings clear in Barisic in the past, and I will continue to make them. He's done at Rangers. I was delighted when I heard he wasn't in the team, because I thought, yeah, that means Leila Bada can't rip the arse out. And again, sorry for swearing, I don't know if I'm allowed to, but I've made that point so far in the past. Fine, yeah. Leila Bada terrifies him, and I was quite glad to see that he wasn't playing, and now he's fully fit for Croatia. So that tells you its own story for me. And John Souttar, I think, is capable of being a very good defender, but I think we'll all agree is capable of some big mistakes, and that's the reason he's at a club like Rangers. If he cut those mistakes out of his game and he was fully fit, I think he'd be playing at a lot higher level. But to spend that money in the summer, and I know Michael Beale said on Sunday, the figures that the Rangers fans have in their heads way too high. It doesn't matter. You've been telling everybody what you're doing, what you're spending. You're telling everybody during the week that with a centre half in mind, and didn't spend enough money to bring him in. That to me says, they looked at one guy, and we know it's Austin Trusty, let's not kid ourselves, but they couldn't get him and didn't fix the problem. If he needed a left centre back and he didn't get the one he wanted, you go and get the next one in the list. You don't just give up, because if he thinks that signing Dujon Sterling and Leon Balogun to fix that defence, which was broken last season, and I go back to the goal against Celtic at Hampden, the Jota goal, that goal you wouldn't see in your park, the play park across the road with school kids. You wouldn't see that goal conceded from them. So if he thought that defence is acceptable, and he thought bringing in a 35-year-old who's, to be honest, not going to last, and he's not going to play more than 20 games a season unless the injury crisis is really, really bad, and a young right back who could probably be a good player down the line, but he's not ready to take over from Tavernier yet, because Tavernier brings so much going forward. If he thought that was the answer defensively, that screams problems to me, and it screams of a man who, and I'm not going to be on here saying Beale out all night. I'm not. I think it is tough for him to win the fans back, but the defence has been a major concern for me for so long, and it was apparent yesterday. how Kyogo was allowed that much space and allowed to be onside is
absolutely.
This team is that defence is always capable of a brain fart, and it's that type of word. That's the best word to describe them, because 90% of the goals Rangers concede are completely avoidable, and it's all down to silly mistakes.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Scott, from inside Ibrox, sort of touching on that point that Scott's just brought about the defence. I mean, I think it was an interesting stat, wasn't it, that if Borna Barisic had played on Sunday, that defence would have been the same defence that faced Celtic 5 years ago. Now, I think you'd struggle to find anywhere in top class club football a defence that's been together for that long. I mean, what's your take on the defence and the issues surrounding the defence for Rangers? And obviously as well what Scott said about Austin Trusty and the fact we didn't seem to have a plan B once that fell through.
I think a big part of the plan B was the club chasing Jonathan Panzo as well. I think obviously that never worked out because Panzo didn't come in the door. But to be playing football matches and to be playing the way we've been playing, i.e., we've conceded goals against Morton. I know it was a penalty and all that, but we've been conceding goals for the season started, and I don't know what it is that Agatha couldn't see, that he couldn't go out and sign a centre back. I know we're linked with Harry Suter on loan and all this jargon, right? But he should have brought somebody in, because that back four's aging. It's the two centre backs have not got a partnership together. The only partnership I've seen that's kind of semi-worked was against Livingston when Balogun and Suter played together, and Suter was on his natural side on the right side of defence. That seemed a lot the chemistry seemed a lot better. It seemed to click a wee bit more. Just before people in the comments start coming in, jumping and tapping me, I'm not saying Balogun starts every week. That is not what I'm saying at all here. But what I'm saying is the mix between the centre-back pairing isn't right, and you can't keep persisting with it. You can't. It's not doable. And to be able to rely on the likes of Ben Davies going out and King going out and loaning us before you can bring somebody in, that's a load of rubbish to me. It's a complete and utter load of rubbish. Bill said in his presser the other day he spent £13 million on 9 players. Aye, but we've also brought in, you've got your £5 million for Glenn Kamara, your £4 million for Fashion Sakala, and at least £2.5 million for Antonio Cholak. So going by my sums, on average, he spent £1.5 million on signings. If we're going to kind of cut corners and look at it quite bluntly. So don't tell me money is not there. You could the 3 Bs in terms of Bennett, Bisgarov and Belo agreed that they weren't going to put the money out to sign Aaron Trusty. It's going to cost the manager his job. That's the conversations that's been had today. And that's how bad results and performances are on the pitch. I've never seen such a disjointed team in all my life. With Todd Cantwell, who was on fire when he signed for Norwich January to summer, it should have been a player of the year. The boy was that good. He's barely kicked a ball this season. He's barely kicked a ball. He looks so Nico Raskin. We're all saying when he came on at half time against Newcastle that he wasn't going to be at the club, and he never turned up on Sunday. He wasn't anywhere to be seen. So what is actually going on? What's going on at the club just now? Because see, from middle to front on Sunday, you've got a front 3 pressing, and then you've got your midfield 3 sitting in their own half. What the hell is that? That's not tactics. That's not competent football management.
The only thing I can think of for that, Scott, is, and this was a big point I spoke to a few people about yesterday when we were doing our own podcast. Rangers take the lead after a minute, and I know the goal's offside, and it is offside. Nobody can argue with that. But does that not give you anybody sitting in the stand now? I was watching the game, and I was sitting after a minute. That Celtic defence will never play together again. That back four, you'll never be able to play against that Celtic back four again, because there's a lot of injuries and a lot of guys coming back from injury who are not quite ready. But you get back, you get beyond them, make a run in behind. Dessers is offside. That's a problem. That is two big problems Rangers have right now. Is the players don't stay on side, and when they go behind, we saw it against PSV, we saw it against Kilmarnock, and we saw it Sunday. Rangers, game management is horrendous because they make silly fouls at points in the game and allow the opposition to regroup, get back into a shape and kill time. Now that to me screams of no game management. But on to that point of the first minute, Rangers go in front. Now the goal's disallowed, it's chopped off. But how can you sit and watch that and say, sitting in a dugout, you've been able to get in front. In the first 10, 15 minutes, I thought Rangers played pretty well. They're making things happen. And then they set off Celtic and allow Celtic yards of space. They allow the back four, who are young, never played in this game before, the two centre-backs. Johnson's nowhere near fit. Taylor, I don't think, is the answer for Celtic's left-back problem. McGregor and O'Reilly, who've been man-marked in every game I've watched Celtic this season, and you give them yards and yards of space to play passes. Now, if you're going to do that, now I've no issue if Michael Beale thinks that's the way to beat Celtic. If you're going to do that, though, you need to have two things. You need to be careful with your passes. You can't give the ball away, which Rangers are horrendous at. And you need to be solid at the back. How many times on Sunday was O'Reilly able to play a pass forward to Maeda, Abada, Kyogo as well? And there was so much space because Tavernier, Sterling, Goldson and Suter were playing a high line and allowing these guys space. That I don't understand that. If you're going to play that way, you have to be solid at the back. This Rangers team can't be solid at the back. So it begs the question. He saw that last season. There was games that happened last year. They sat off Celtic in the 3-2 game, and Celtic took the lead early. Another brain fart of a goal. And again, it's just silly style of play. It's just a style of play that doesn't work.
Absolutely, yeah. I think the thing as well for me is, I think like you both touched on as well, the goals that we give away, teams don't have to work to score goals against us. It's not like and I bet if you sat and you looked at those 20 goals we've conceded in those 13 games, I bet there's very few of them that have come from outstanding passing moves or a piece of outstanding trickery or a piece of outstanding skill. The vast majority of those goals will go from somebody falling asleep, somebody missing a header, somebody missing a kick, somebody letting someone run off them. And it's just really worrying that we always seem to let teams just score when they want against us. And it's like you said, I think, can't remember which one it was you said this. You look back at that goal on Sunday that we conceded. The header from Goldson he could head it anywhere on the park. There's Rangers players stood around him. There's space headed, and he heads it straight to O'Reilly, who then heads it back. How Goldson is not aware that Kyogo is stood behind him, why Suter is so far behind Goldson playing him on, it just beggars belief as to what two professional centre halves are doing. You wouldn't see that on a park on a Sunday. It's appalling and it's worrying. And you spoke about the tactics and things like that. I mean, one of the things I wanted to bring up tonight, and we've kind of got onto the game on Sunday, was Beale's use of Kemar Roofe on Sunday for me was so confusing. I mean, I might have got this wrong, but it seemed in the first half that he was kind of pushed out to the right and he came in inside sometimes. And then the second half, he seemed to be at the tip of a diamond, man-marking Callum McGregor. Well, why would you put your best striker on man-marking somebody? To me, it just beggared belief. I mean, it'd be like Pep Guardiola saying, to Erling Haaland, I want you to drop back and man-mark their creative midfielder. It just, to me, and I'm not saying that Kemar Roofe's as good as Erling Haaland, but that's the kind of point there. Scott from Inside Ibrox, what was your take on what Beale was trying to do, or what he was actually doing with the best finisher at the club on Sunday?
See how you're talking about Roofe man-marking Callum McGregor. The last person to do that in an old firm match, we get beat 5-1 at Ibrox off Celtic, and it was Pedro Caixinha put Kenny Miller on to man-mark Scott Brown. Remember in the press conference after it, he sat and tried to explain it, and he get glasses out and all this kind of shit. Come on. I mean, come on. Michael Beale, a coach of that pedigree's got to know better than that. Kemar Roofe, I've not spoke to one Rangers supporter that doesn't still think that he's the best striker at the club. And we've spent 13 million on between Lammers, Danilo and Dessers. We've spent 13 million in forward players, and one of them started on Sunday. One of them. Cyril Dessers. Lammers come on and Danilo come on. Tells you everything you need to know. His tactics were rank rotten on Sunday, and it's just not working. It's not
When
working
they've
at
been
all.
ranked rotten in every big game as well, and that's the
100%.
thing that
Aye,
Rangers are getting.
100%.
Rangers fans are getting concerned about, because that Rangers have lost 7 games under Michael Beale, and I know people will say about the Aberdeen game not being a big game, but please hear me out here. It's 4 games against Celtic, and I'm not giving them the 3-0 game, because that Celtic team was on the beach, so I'm not giving them that.
Yep.
I'm giving them the semi-final, the final, the game at Parkhead, and then the game on Sunday, and then obviously Aberdeen away, PSV away, and Kilmarnock away. Those are 7 games, and the first thing that I hear from people is, "Oh, he overthought it." If you've overthought it in the 7th big game, it's not the fact he's overthinking it. There's no basic there. There's no basic system. The people say about that Aberdeen game, the league was over and things like that. Celtic dropped points that weekend. Celtic drew 1-1 with Motherwell on the Saturday. Rangers had a chance to cut it down to 7. Now that's stupid. That will sound ridiculous to certain people, but my thing with Rangers is, if Celtic go out on the Saturday and score 4, Rangers score 5. Rangers try and beat better Celtic's result every weekend. It doesn't matter in what competition, at any time in the season. And that was another chance for Rangers to better Celtic's result, and they didn't do it. They actually lost the weekend because Celtic drew. And that's what I'm meaning about big game mentality. And I don't think Rangers have got that big game mentality. They won't. And people say about the 55 season, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Rangers were unbeaten. Rangers were brilliant that season. Celtic were abysmal, and there was a lot of games. Watch some of those old firm games back. If it wasn't for Alan McGregor, I remember, go back to the Alan McGregor save at Griffiths, which is one of the best saves I've ever seen for a Rangers goalkeeper. Go back and watch those games. The Celtic defence forward were getting in behind that defence even then, and it's the same defence with the exception of John Souttar. So you have to ask yourself, what are they seeing in the defence? Now, I love James Tavernier as a forward player, as a presence going forward, but he's not as dynamic as he was 3 years ago. He can't run both ends of the floor. Now, it's, if you're going to play this narrow system, now I totally saw your point in Kamar Roof, because I was sitting watching the game with a couple of friends, and I said to both of them, he's played 4 different formations in the first 30 minutes, because he had Roof out right. He then had him through the middle with Dessers as a 2, with Cantwell on the right and Matondo on the left. Then brought it in, as you say, into a kind of a diamond, and then had him kind of sitting in Callum McGregor at 1-0 down. And I'm saying to myself, this is the Rangers manager. Now, I don't think Brendan Rodgers has started the season great with Celtic, because I think they're quite turgid to watch as well, and we saw that on Saturday. But when you give a team that amount of space, you give any team in the world that amount of space to control the midfield and control the back line, they're going to take it. It doesn't matter if they're starting the season well or not, and they haven't started well. There isn't a lot of people with confidence in Brendan Rodgers across the city, but they were given a gift. They were given an absolute gift. Beale was tactically inept, and we need to start saying it. He was out of his depth on Sunday, because he didn't know how to change it. As soon as the goal went in, the goal's at a perfect time for Celtic, but as soon as half time goes, do you think Rangers are scoring 2 goals? Because I don't. I just don't have that confidence, and it's a belief thing. But I just don't I just don't have the confidence. And I'm getting to the forwards, because I think they'll bring something, but right now, how's he planning on fitting all these forwards in? He's bought them all. He's bought Lammers, Dessers, Danilo. He's brought Seaman and loan. He's obviously fancies Matondo now, who was out in the cold, who was told he could get out and loan apparently during the summer. So now he's brought him back in. Roof, obviously, somebody has a lot of confidence in. Lawrence, he seems to kind of fancy as well coming back in. Again, you've got all these players, and you Cantwell is playing out of position. It's Cifuentes out right midfield on Wednesday night, a position he's probably never played in before in his life. That screams to me as a guy who 8 games in doesn't know what he's doing here.
Absolutely. I mean, the substitutions as well just made absolutely zero sense at the time that they did. And I mean, going back to you talked about, all the players who've brought in over the summer. Scott from Inside Ibrox, Scott Mckay, tell me, on Sunday we had 8 players who were here last season start. Against PSV on Wednesday, we had 8 players who were here last season start. Only 3 new signings started on Wednesday, 3 new signings started on Sunday. What does that say to you about the confidence he's clearly got or not got in the players he's actually brought in this summer, and why and what message does it send to Danilo, to Lammers, to Cifuentes, that then, I mean, Cifuentes especially didn't even get on Sunday. What message is he sending to them?
He doesn't know his best 11. That's a message he's sending to us as supporters as well. He doesn't know his best system. He's stuck with a defence that we've just basically ran riot over 33 years. I've just had a right good go to defence and did deserve it. He's stuck with a defence that isn't working. He's not got a midfield three that he can rely upon. I like the signing of Cifuentes. I really do. I think he's potentially been the signing of the summer, but the way he's getting used, you could tell with the guys kind of after he signed in his interview with Rangers TV that he's not got a great understanding of English. So how can you expect him to take instructions for Tav and playing in that position if he's only been in the door?
And he's on natural position as well.
Yep, 100%, Scott. Bale doesn't. He's just simply not got a clue, and that's what playing 8 players for last season tells me. The fact that I was a wee bit surprised Bale get rid of Scott Arfield in the summer. I thought Arfield was probably one of the players that departed that I would have gave another year to, just because of his impact at Aberdeen when we won 3-2. I thought Arfield gave you that option for the bench. But so in terms of having a wee bit of continuity in midfield, I thought Arfield maybe would have brung that on Sunday. He knows what the fixtures are all about in terms of what's expected, etc., keeping standards on the park. 8 players that started last season and only 3 summer signings after we've spent all this supposed big money. Tells its own story, if you ask me.
Absolutely, yeah, 100% agree. And Scott from Rangers Assessment, Scott, there's an interesting point someone made. I think Gallant Pioneer says in the live chat, is Spiel made changes, not upgrades. Do you see these players as been upgrades, or is it too early to make that judgment, or are they just like for like? What's your opinion on what we've brought in?
I don't think they're like for like. I think I see what they all bring. I think Danilo already. You can see he's got a really good kind of eye for goal. He's got good. You saw with the way he brings down the pass from Goldson for the diagonal that Hart makes quite a good save on. That's a terrific touch. That technical. He's got a lot of technical ability. His movement looks pretty good. The problem with Danilo is when he's come on, he's been told to play in the left side. He's never been told to play now. My problem with the Danilo and Dessers signings are they've spent so much money on them. Danilo been quoted around 5.5. Dessers we think is around about 4, just over, maybe over 4. Those guys are there to play. You're not making big money signings like that not to play. So you have to realise, right, these 2 guys, you have to find a way to play these 2 guys together. But then that leads to the question, Sam Lammers costs 3 million as well. So you need to fit all these guys into the one team. You can't have them sitting on the bench. Now, Dessers, I think, I remember when we first started, I spoke to a Dutch journalist about Lammers and Dessers, and he said something very interesting at the time. He said, Dessers and Lammers could be a really good strike partnership. This was before Danilo was even mentioned. And what he meant was by that, they're both not clinical goal scorers. Now, he said that at the time, and you can look at the goal records and see that they're not clinical goal scorers, but they'll be able to link off well off one another. Dessers has got a really good kind of physical presence. He's quite good in terms of kind of the press. I thought it was a one-man press on Sunday, to be honest, and well, I'm sure we'll get into the VAR shambles later on, but he does really well. When you look at that, and I know it's a ridiculous decision, but he does really well. He's quite alert to what's going on. He knows kind of to try and attack their fullbacks and try and make it difficult for them. And he's quite good at that. Lammers is is technically very good. I think probably as technically good as Cantwell. Cantwell was obviously a harder worker, so I think that just gives Cantwell the edge in that position. But you're bringing in all these players, and Danilo sitting on the bench. I think Danilo's only started twice, and it was in Servette, and I think he started the Livingston game. I think he might have started. He's only started 2 games, I think, but again, it just leads to this question: have you bought these players just because they're available, or have you bought these players to fit a system? Because yes, it might not. Every signing is not going to be a success. Never ever was. You'll see that this season at every club in world football. Not every signing's a success, but you have to see some sort of rhythm. And now he's playing Dessers. He's anybody that I was talking to about Cyril Dessers says don't play him as a one. He has to be part of a partnership, and you're playing him up front himself against Celtic and Sunday. It just mystifies me. And I see enough from the signings to say they've all got their traits, they've all got their ability, but they need to link together, or you've just signed players for a front line because they look good. Apparently, he's been after Dessers and Lammers for a while. Have they become available and he's just went, right, I'm going to try and get them now? If he's thought he has to have a system in place and he doesn't have a system in place. Now, we all would the assessment that it would be like a narrow formation. It would be, when Rangers at the best, it would be Raskin, Cifuentes, Cantwell, Lammers, Danilo, Dessers up front. And that's fine. If he wants to, if he's going to die on that hill, that's absolutely fine. Have we seen that in play yet?
No.
So it's a worry to me. And the problem with that narrow system is you have two aged fullbacks doing a power of work who are quite inept defensively. And then 2 weeks before the transfer window, he comes out and says, "Oh, we haven't signed a Ryan Kent replacement." Come on. I mean, that's rubbish. It's just totally rubbish. And it seems to me, and he needs to shut his mouth in press conferences. That's one thing he needs to do. He needs to. Now, we all say Gerrard was quite he kept things close to his chest. You could see if things weren't going his way, you could see him being unhappy in press conferences. Gio gave you nothing. Bill sings like a canary in press conferences, and it needs to stop because he's been made to look arrogant and been made to look like a fool because he's not backing up his arrogance. I always say Brendan Rodgers is very arrogant, but he backs it up. He's got the results in the bag to back it up. Michael Beale doesn't in big games, and that's my big thing with him now. He's too vocal. He's telling everybody, "Oh, you're way off with the terms of the signings." Fair enough, but just keep your mouth shut. But if you're going to talk the way he does, back it up. Go and win games. Go and outfox a Celtic team that were there for the taking. Don't get beat 1-0. And to be fair to him, he didn't use the VAR excuse. He didn't, and I thought he would. He didn't. He came out and he was quite critical. Fair enough, but he then goes into it to saying, "Oh, you're way off in terms of how much I've spent money." But the reason we're saying that is because you're telling everybody how much you're spending. So what is it? I think he's very, very. I think he's coming across as very, very arrogant, and you have to have that confidence. You have to have that confidence to be the Rangers manager, but you have to back it up. And he isn't. Gerrard was quite confident, but Gerrard did have the credit in the bank of you could see what he was trying to do. Gerrard got a lot of time because of his name. Michael Beale thinks he's going to get the same because he was part of that. Doesn't work that way. It's a results-based business. In big games, he hasn't delivered.
Absolutely. And I mean, one of the point RFC 72 says here, Sunderland got Timothy Pembele from PSG for $1 million. And he's a right back who had a lot of potential, I'm told. Beale perhaps has taken too much on this summer that we really do miss having that director of football, the sporting director. Do we need someone like that? Is that part of? There was nobody to kind of challenge him on his signings to say, "Hang on a minute, this player is he right for this system? What is the system you want to use?" Do you think that having a sporting director could have helped this summer, Scotty?
No. That's gave. It's basically gave the media, fan media, everybody, a shot at Beale, right? Because that's basically what everybody's doing just now. It's his signings that's in the door. A sporting director, to me, isn't going to change the outcome of those signings. I think if a manager wants them, a manager goes and gets them, and be it on his head if it doesn't work or not. And so far, we're only 4 games into the season. It's not working. The signings aren't working. in terms of the comment about the boy for PSG, you had a right back going for Motherwell. Scott, you'll know a bit about this boy. Was it Max Johnston?
Max Johnson.
For Motherwell. How did we not go and sign him? You're hitting in terms of it's a young Scottish player, knows what the club's about, knows the league, he's got potential. He could come in and be one of the homegrown players in Europe. I mean, you're just looking at it and you're like, nah, it's definitely not working in terms of his signings anyway. I would have really liked the boy Johnston in for Motherwell because I think he would have provided a lot better competition for Tavernier because he could get forward, but he's ended up going to Sturm Graz, isn't he?
Yeah, and it's that thing as well. Like, and I see like people saying, "Oh, Rangers should be looking at Kevin Nisbet and Lauren Shankland." I totally understand that, but the problem you've got with Scottish based is, and we've seen it in the past. Millwall could sign Nisbet for $2 million. Rangers are going to be paying that. The price won't go up because he's in the same league. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's things like that. Right. But my problem with the director of football thing is very, very simple. That we saw last season, and it was a big thing of, remember when Bassey was sold and Gio qualified for the Champions League, everybody was saying, oh, Gio will be able to pick his own players. The players he signed last season were garbage. Not garbage, that's unfair because there's a few good ones in there, but it screamed to me of Gio wasn't picking his own players. And I know we saw the thing of, well, he didn't sign any Dutch players. He didn't sign any players to me that fit the way he wanted to play. Like, I didn't see what Bren Davis was brought in for. I don't think Yilmaz was a like-for-like replacement in Calvin Bassey. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Like, things like that. Like, apparently Tillman was signed because you didn't get the number one target was a guy, Fulgini, who's went to Lons. He's playing Champions League football now. He was a big target. We all know about Joey Veerman. We all know that kind of thing. And I've criticised Ross Wilson in the past when the director of football method, it didn't work. But it didn't work for him because we've seen the two windows Gio had. The first one was probably as bad a window as I've ever seen because it was a project player from Poland, a guy who's injury prone, and Aaron Ramsey, who I don't know how the finances worked in that, and Amad Diallo, who we all know has got terrific technical ability, but looked out of his depth in an Old Firm game and hardly kicked a ball since. And
I know.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? And it is that double-edged sword. You've got a director of football and we've had bad windows. I don't think this is a bad window yet, but there needs to be some sort of method. And that international breaks probably came at a good time, but it's also 2 weeks where there's no Rangers games and it's going to be all the fans are going to be thinking about. It was the same with the World Cup when Gio, I think, was at St Mirren. He drew just before the World Cup and obviously lost his job. And fans were festering on it for weeks because there was no Rangers games to worry about. It'll be the same here. And it'll just be, yeah, Rangers could win. Rangers could win every game from now until the next time they play Celtic in terms of domestically. They could. And Bill's record in the league is quite good.
Mm-hmm.
But do you have confidence that they'll go and beat Celtic? Do you have confidence they'll go and win the League Cup? That's it. No. That's a problem.
No. I've definitely got no confidence in him in terms of going to win a League Cup, but that's me being judgmental because he was in a coaching staff under Gerrard when it came to domestic trophies. I don't think we've got that winning mentality in the squad, and I think ultimately that's where it's coming down to when it comes to playing for Rangers. If there's not a winning mentality there, then you're not going to win anything, essentially.
You're not going to win anything, but it's those big. I mean, Rangers we've seen in the past, like, and people are saying obviously like, oh, like we need characters. They need characters in the team, and I understand that, but it's a different way of playing now. Rangers, I don't think when I was growing up, I don't know if you'll be the same as me. Celtic were always better at playing football. They were always better with the ball on the deck, and Rangers were always a more physical team and could grind out a result. The problem is now Celtic are both better at playing football, and they grind out bad results, and they grind out results when they're not playing well.
Aye.
So where's the levelling up that we were promised under this new thing? And it's weird that we could go on about it all day, but I just worry about how the fans react because with Gio, you could see he had credit in the bank. He took Rangers on a magnificent journey to the final. We did, and he did earn a bit more credibility for that. But he also lost the league. He was 4 points clear when he took over, and they ended up the season 4 points behind. What took Rangers to the final? So he was given that kind of breathing space. Domestically, away from home, he was really poor. In the Champions League last season, wildly exposed, and he didn't last. And he was tactically better in big games than Michael Beale was.
Aye.
So
Aye.
that's the problem, and I just don't know. I think there's a chance he can recover it, but he has to kick on. He can't afford any of these big game mistakes.
I know. It's definitely worrying times. I think in terms of, I think one of the articles I might have wrote for you, Scott, was in terms of James Tavernier when he said that he was training in with the land of the Giants. We've conceded how many set-piece goals have we scored for a set-piece yet? We've got a set-piece coach that's not doing anything. That's clearly not working because we don't look a threat for corners at all, especially when you've got big guys like Lammers in the park. I mean, that's also a very worrying thing. If you're going to bring in these physical guys, there's got to be an element of seeing them playing to their strengths. Cyril Dessers says, I don't know if he's won a knock-on yet. Do you know what I mean?
He has, but nobody. That's the problem. Though. He's winning these knock-ons and he's knocking it onto the defence, and that's the thing. I think we've won back.
Hello there, guys. Yeah, I've rejoined on my phone because my laptop has just completely died. I don't know what's wrong with it, so I've rejoined on my phone. Hopefully, you can hear me still and pick up everything.
Pick up fine, mate. Loud and clear.
Absolutely. So I don't know if you've touched on this whilst I was away, but I heard you mentioning James Tavernier there, and he's certainly someone who's caused an awful lot of controversy this season, and questions over his captaincy, questions over his ability to defend, questions over whether the fact that he scores goals and assists outweighs his defensive weaknesses and his lack of captaincy skills. Scott, Mckay, where are you up to on the whole James Tavernier thing? Should he still be captain? Should he be in the team, or is it just that we genuinely do not have any alternative to him?
In this team, yes. Should they be a Rangers captain? Probably not. I don't think he's vocal enough. Funnily enough, the piece I was talking about writing for Scott, it was on whether James Tavernier was a good Rangers captain or not. And I've come away with the conclusion in the article that I thought he was. In terms of the Europa League run to the final, I feel at times James Tavernier dragged us there on his own. But if you look at the guy's trophy count, 2 trophies, apart from the championship stuff, lost countless semi-finals and finals. Not being able to, Scott was talking again about game management earlier on. We get beat off PSV 5-1, whatever it was last week, 5-1, and that was just signs of last season all over again. When it's crunch time, there's no leadership in the park, and that's evident to see. Really, just like Sunday, there was no leadership in the park in terms of how we were going to get back into the game or manage it or get it. Celtic. See, Fitbit to me when I was growing up, Fitbit to me was about getting in people's faces. It was about playing for a badge. It was winning your 50-50s, all that kind of thing. It still is the same now. It's a lot more technical minded now. But if we'd won more tackles and everything on Sunday, see, instead of camping 7-8 players behind the halfway line and leaving a striker and 2 wingers or whatever it was up front in the rain in the first and second half, then if we'd actually went and got in their faces and played the high press properly, then we might have actually got something. Do you know what I mean? There was none of it. There's absolutely none of it. Nobody seems to be wanting to play for a badge. And 9 times out of 10, your manager looks at your captain to police all that kind of thing in the dressing room and to make sure standards are kept on the pitch. But it's not happening. It's not happening at all.
Absolutely, I agree with you. It isn't happening at all, is it? It's been poor. And Scott McPike, where are you up to? Where are you up to with James Tavernier at the moment in terms of captaincy, in terms of him actually playing? Like I said to Scott, is it just that we genuinely don't have anyone else? Is he fit to be captain, or is that like heresy to even suggest that James Tavernier shouldn't be captain. Which when I've mentioned it on social media or mentioned it in videos, I've got some absolute trollings from some people about it. Where are you up to on the whole James Tavernier debate?
I go back to a time about 23 years ago when Advocat stripped Amoruso a captaincy and brought in Ferguson. Do you remember the furore in the media at that time?
Yeah.
Because of that? That would be the same here. Now, we can have our debates on whether Tavernier Rangers captain material. Again, you can have your own opinions. Personally, I'm not. When he was named as captain, I was stunned. I was like, it doesn't scream captain to me. But we also have to look at the fact that in big games, big moments, James Tavernier's been quite big, and that sounds silly, but what I mean by that is, like, last season, the game at Parkhead, scores that wonderful free kick, scores against PSV. Now, I know a minute later his defence, and he's probably at fault for the third goal, actually, in fairness, but he brings Rangers back into the game. He gives them a degree of hope, and there's been times like that over the past few years where Tavernier's been quite big in moments. And he said something interesting in his press conference. He was asked about his own start to the season, if he was happy with it, and he said, yeah. And it got a lot of furore in the support because he has looked quite poor defensively, but he's also been massive in big moments. Like, he's also the goal against Ross County, the goal against PSV. He's capable of that, and he's one of the only players who is. And we know that. And if you're in penalties, there's a reason he takes the penalties, is because he's trusted to do it. Now, his penalty taking isn't always the best, but he's the man chosen for it, and he's a captain. So he's always going to get those chances. But I think that's kind of taken away from the real problem that with that. Dujon Sterling could be the successor to Tavernier down the line. Take Tavernier out that Rangers team, and you're probably going to lose a lot in terms of attacking. He's still the top goal scorer. He's top goal scorer this season. He was top goal scorer last season. I don't care what MD says, and I think he's a terrific player going forward. Now, I was of the opinion very much on Saturday when we were picking our team for the weekend and things like that. I said he won't do it, but he should go 3 at the back.
Yeah,
he should go with Suter, Sterling, and Goldson. Now, that was for the reason of to give them a bit of balance in the back line, but to also play Tavernier as a wing back. Now, you're going to have somebody like Matondo on the left side who's not the best defensively, but you're going to have a bit more cover there with, like, whoever he plays on the left side. He would have probably played Sterling just the way the game worked out. But he's talked all summer about the reason John Suter's back in is to play 3 at the back. Games like that, if you're going to that's the perfect time to do it. Try something different. He had Jack and Mask in there. You've mentioned obviously about the subs. The boos, the second loudest reaction was Roof coming off. Now, it wasn't Roof coming off, I don't think, because I don't think Roof had a brilliant game. But it was more who he brought off. He brought off Matondo, and I can't remember who else he brought off at that point. Was it Dessers?
No, Dessers didn't come off till late. 60 minutes they left Dessers on.
Who did he bring off? Was it both Roof and Matondo?
I think
it was Roof and Matondo. Yeah, he brought Roof and Matondo off and brought Danilo and Lammers on. The
reason I would have thought they were booing, and this is just me, and it might have been booing at Beale for bringing it for why are you bringing Roof off and keeping Jack and Raskin on the park when you're chasing the game? That was my problem with substitutions. It wasn't bringing Roof off; it was keeping Jack, keeping Raskin on. Jack didn't really get involved in the game. Raskin didn't really come alive until late on. He played a terrific pass for Lammers, and Lammers should bury it, to be honest. And I think the way he rounds the keeper instead of trying to just smash it home says to me this Rangers team don't have any confidence that they're going to get back into the game. The one goal of the game is a terrific piece of skill from Kyogo, but Scott, I'll ask you the same question. If that's a Rangers player, how many touches do they take before they don't just take it first time and score for there? They take about 2 or 3 touches, and by then Hearts had enough time to come off his line, put them under pressure. That's the difference. That is the difference. The two sides are Celtic have got a clinical striker who's been terrific in these games recently, and Rangers don't have a player that's got that confidence that they're going to deliver. And we can talk about Tavernier, but Tavernier's been asked to do so much in the game, and he's knackered. He's out on his feet. He's 30. I think he's 31.
31. He's coming up for 32.
It's impossible to do that. It's impossible to do that. I go back to when John Barnes was Celtic manager. Now, John Barnes probably would never ever get a mention in this show and probably never will again. But he played a 4-2-2-2 system. It was very narrow, and he had a lot of the fullbacks doing a power of work. Those fullbacks, I'm pretty sure, were Tom Boyd and Jackie McNamara. They're similar. I'm not comparing Tom Boyd to James Tavernier, don't get me wrong, but similar ages. You're asking your fullbacks to do a power of work. If you're going to do that, now we see a lot of fullbacks kind of doing a lot on both ends of the field, but they usually have a bit of cover behind them in the defensive end. Rangers don't have that. Jack was playing in there. How many times against PSV at home was Connor Goldson having to come out and cover Tavernier because he was caught out in position and Noah Lang was ripping that side apart? We've seen this movie before, and the fact we've seen this movie before and we're still talking about it is baffling to me, because that defence, I would have fixed the defence before the strikers, honestly. And I know Rangers' big problem last season wasn't scoring goals, but this Rangers defence are capable of brain farts, and I keep saying it, and it's a word I've used before. But this Rangers team can't defend it. They're always going to make mistakes. Look at the goal last season that Ben Davis at Parkhead. Ben Davis should never put on a Rangers shirt after that. The way Borna Barisic gets destroyed by Lila Bad in the 3-0 game the season before. Scar tissue. How many times do we think of Harry Maguire? I keep talking about guys like Harry Maguire. You'll always look at Harry Maguire as a comedy figure because of some of his mistakes. I'm at that point with these Rangers players, and that's where we are. And that the fact the managers let that go over the summer instead of really investing in it is shocking, because you need a left-sided centre back. Ben Davis isn't the answer. John Souttar, I agree with Scott, and I've said it myself. John Souttar's a good defender, but he's not left-sided. And I do agree that the most stable the defence was when Souttar and Balogun played, because Souttar was playing on the right side. Yeah. He played last season, I don't know if you remember it, but there was a few games where he played Goldson and Souttar together towards the end of last season. He played Souttar in the right and Goldson in the left. And it worked. It did work. So why do you then reverse that in the summer? If you're going to go with Goldson and Souttar, and you've seen in the past that you might be able to play Goldson in the left and Souttar on the right, why not stick with that? It done him no harm last season. So why are you reverting back to it and we're seeing the same mistakes? It must tell you something.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Just before we go on, thank you, John Lammy, for the £5 super chat. Thank you very much for that. That's fantastic. Scott, 3 at the back. You know, I think a lot of people have said that this sort of the signings we've made, the squad we've got is screaming out for 3 at the back. Do you think that would help address some of the defensive issues in the medium term until we could actually invest, and would perhaps take some of the defensive duties away from Bornham and away from Tavernier?
Aye. My team with a back 3 would be Butland, Goldson, Souttar, Balogun. Or well, Souttar on the right, Goldson and Balogun, right? Sterling needs to stay as a fullback for me because he's untried and untested at centre back in a Rangers shirt. You need Balogun in there, especially if Yilmaz is going to be my left back. So Balogun needs to slot into that left side of my 3 to keep talking Yilmaz through the game. Me and Scott have touched upon it in previous podcasts that Yilmaz needs an experienced head in next to him to tell him when to go, tell him when to stay. It's all about positioning for a young boy. He's still only 21, loads of potential, fantastic prospect. I've got Yilmaz, I've got Tav, then I've got Cifuentes, Braskin and Cantwell. Campbell's got a free roll on the left-hand side of midfield to get forward. And then there's Danilo and Roof up top for me. Because with Danilo and Roof, you've got movement, you've got potentially good combination play. You've got Cantwell getting up and getting in amongst them. You've got pace on the left-hand side of Yilmaz. You've got Tavernier doing what Tav does in terms of getting up, but you've still got that experience and Balogun sitting at the back and even talking to John Souttar and saying, where you going, you stay there, etc., etc. Same with Connor Goldson. We know how influential Connor Goldson can be, but he needs to do something. And he needs to decide whether it's, all this long ball stuff in Sunday, I don't know where that's came from. He played constant long balls in the first half and it didn't work.
Because there was nothing on in front of him and it's worked in the past. And that's the sad nature. It's that he's capable. You watch a game and play 10 long balls, 2 of them will work. But yesterday, Sunday, I keep saying yesterday, that was all he had because there was nothing in front of him. Jack wasn't really doing anything. Cantwell, I thought, he was trying his socks off, to be fair to him, but it just didn't. There was nothing coming off for him, and you could see the frustration. That's why he gets booked. But he was just so frustrated, and you'd noticed that a few times. As I look back at, and we've not really mentioned him, but I think Jack Butland. I know people will say, "Oh, he conceded 5 goals on Wednesday night," but he's been terrific since he came in.
It would have been 9 or 10.
He's been terrific. He's been terrific because I've watched him a lot, just and kind of watching his body language on the park, just how quick he is off his line is just like the thing that Rangers haven't had in a long time. And I'm a massive fan of Alan McGregor, but one thing he was never ever good at was coming off his line, and it was a reason he lost a lot of goals last season. Butland has already been a big improvement in that.
100%.
And he's very vocal. Like he's very similar to McGregor in that regard. And he's up here with something to prove as well. He wants to get back kind of in the England setup. I'm not saying he's going to, but he's looking up here as an opportunity to get his career back on track because he's struggled the past few years. And already he'll be feeling like this has been a step up, but he's got to trust his defence, and he'll be sitting every goal he's conceded. Now, I know a couple of goalkeepers, and I know one thing about them. If they lose a goal, they're looking at every opportunity to blame the defenders because they don't want to be the blame. They don't want to get the blame. And he'll be looking at every goal Rangers have conceded this season going, none of these are my fault. I don't think he's at fault for one goal Rangers have conceded this season. And that tells you the whole story.
No. Absolutely, you're right. I think you're right. Butland for me has been the signing of the summer, signing of the season so far. He looks class. He dominates that area. He comes for crosses. To me, he'd actually make a better captain than Tav in terms of his leadership. His shouts that he gets in people's ears. He is a quality keeper, and I think you're right, Scott. He has got something to prove. He wants to get back to where he was when he was in the England team. As much as it pains probably our Scottish viewers, England don't tend to have terrible keepers, and you've got to be a decent keeper to get into the England team. He was a good keeper there, and if he gets back to somewhere near that form, we're going to have one hell of a keeper. He's the only one so far that's kind of shown anything in terms of those signings, and it's worrying. It really is worrying that it's only down to him. And you're right, had he not played against PSV Wednesday night, that score could have been 10-11. So I don't get the criticism some people have had of him. I think he is very, very good and very talented, and a real quality player. Do you think? I'll start with you, Scott Mckay. Do you think it's too late now for Beale? Has he lost the fans to such an extent that there is literally no hope for him ever getting them back, and he can't save his job? Or is there a way he saves his job?
See, we need to put this into perspective a wee bit, right? I know we're out of Champions League. We're 4 games into the season, right? 4 games in. 4 games. Can you tell me Celtic are going to drop points again soon? But at the same time, it's in manner and how we've lost them 4 games. It's the big problem for me. It's the manner and the fact that he's 13, 14 matches in, including pre-season, and he's still not got his best formation. He's starting 11. A manager should know all that before a season starts. That's what pre-season's for. We're talking about getting an international break so that he can fix things. He's been saying he's going to fix things for the last 3 weeks. Nothing's getting fixed. We're still conceding goals for corners. We're still unsteady at the back. That's not being fixed on the training pitch. We've still not got a system going forward. We've still not got a brand of football. There's nothing. So for me, I watched the Rangers board drag it out with Gio last season for as long as it did, and Beale come in and had an impact in terms of from November to June in terms of his points tally. Managed to kind of close the gap domestically as such, but it wasn't his team, so you had to make allowances for it. There's no wiggle room for excuses like that anymore this season. It's all on him. It's all his signings. It's his money he spent. It's this completely falls on Michael Beale's shoulders. And instead of trying to make himself out to be Marcelo Bielsa, he just wants to do the basics right. If he does the basics right, then we might actually get somewhere. He's trying to sound too... He's overcomplicating every single little thing he does. Just do your job. Just be a coach. Make your players... That's what training's for. Make your players better. But for me, we need to I hate to say this, but we need to get rid of him. We need to get somebody else in. Who is another? Who'd you bring in? Like we're saying before the show started, Kevin Muscat for me isn't the answer either. Kevin Muscat, with a wee look at his domestic record, that would be an impulsive buy by the Rangers board had we to bring him in. You've got could you tell Knutson the Bodil Glimp? I like you look at him. I like you look at his teams play. They've got a high press. They're fast. They're pacey. But the problem is we've not got any pace anymore to play that way. We sold it. The last pacey player we had went to Saudi Arabia for £4 million. So now Bill needs to go, and I need the manager in that's got some sort of identity. Because you know what? See if we fail seeing the players try it, then at least we know what we're watching. Because right now, I didn't know what I was watching on Sunday. It was awful.
Absolutely. Scott McPike, do you think, is there any way back for him now, or given how toxic it was at the end on Sunday, and given and I know social media is not the perfect place, but the fact that it seems that literally nobody is sticking up for him at all on social media, do you think it's too late now for him? Is he dead man walking?
I don't think he's dead man walking, but I think the rope is very, very heavy. And what I mean by that is, if he somehow goes on and wins every game from now until Christmas and wins the League Cup and does really well in Europe, but he then goes to Parkhead and loses, the goodwill that he'll have built up from the Celtic game last will then just be away again, because he's not won another big game in terms of beating Celtic. And you're judged in beating Celtic. I don't care about I'm not going to say I don't care about Europe, because I do, but we saw with Gio, he had a brilliant UEFA Europa League run, but he didn't beat Celtic he didn't beat Celtic. He goes to PSV and wins, goes to Celtic the next weekend and loses 4-0. There's something about Celtic that the Rangers. You look back to the kind of 90s, and I know I'm kind of being nostalgic a wee bit, but no matter what that Celtic team did, they could never ever edge Rangers. And it's similar here. And it's more a case of the fact that Rangers just, I don't think they're standing still, because they're spending a lot of money, they're trying to get it right, but you have to improve against Celtic. I don't think Celtic are better than they were last season, but I don't think Rangers are either. So Celtic, come back to me now, the one point that was made in the media that was totally spot on, and I'm never one to say Chris Boyd's brilliant in the media, because I think sometimes he's just terrible in the media. But he said something really, really interesting to me. He said there was a positivity about Ibrox the past couple of weeks, but it had nothing to do with Rangers. It was more because Celtic had dropped points and were out the League Cup. And he is 100% right.
Yep.
Rangers fans had a lot of hope going into that game, not because Rangers were playing well, because it looked as if Celtic come back the way. And I'm seeing a comment there with Celtic's number under Gerrard. It took time for that, and it took Celtic to really, really crumble. Celtic, the two big games for Gerrard that gave you a lot of kind of confidence that he would get it right and lead Rangers to a title was the game at Hampden, where I know Rangers absolutely dominated Celtic in the final, and Foster put in a great goalkeeping performance. But you saw enough to say that Rangers team can go toe to toe with Celtic. And then he goes at Parkhead and wins 3 weeks later. And you've got that belief in him that he can go on and build on it. And he does go on and build on it. We don't have that with Michael Beale. We don't have the big result. Gio had it in the Cup semi-final, where he came off 120 minutes against Braga and looked far fitter than that Celtic team. Where's that fitness now? Because that Rangers team don't have the levels of fitness that they did that time. And they were playing a lot more games. They can't. There's just so many questions I have with the manager, and one big question I have, and I would love to interview him and just ask him, what are you trying to do? What did you think was going to happen when you sat off Celtic 20 minutes into a game at home with no fans, by the way, with 50,000 Rangers fans, not a Celtic fan in sight, and you sat off them and make it feel like an away game? You won't see Rangers. You shouldn't see any home team do that. You should have confidence that you can. Rangers have a lot of good players, and we saw against Servette. Do you remember Rangers were getting booed, and just there was so frustrated. There was so much frustration in the ground that night against Servette because they were trying a lot of things and nothing was coming off. It was always a final touch. And then I was thinking, watching that game, I was thinking there is some sort of you can see what's been trying to happen. Haven't seen anything like that since. The only half decent performance was against PSV, and there were still 2 brain farts in there where they conceded 2 goals. So again, it just there's no. I just don't. I don't know. I want to be wrong. I want to be on here at the end of May or on my own podcast and saying Michael Beale's turned it around. Michael Beale's went and won the title. He can still win a treble. Could do well in the Europa League. Do we have confidence he's going to do that? You made a good point there, Scott, about Celtic will drop points. I absolutely think Celtic will drop points. But can you trust Rangers to pick up the pieces? Because I don't. That's the problem. I don't.
Yeah, I agree. I agree fully there, Scott. You just got no confidence that they are going to be able to exploit that for me. And I'd love to be able to interview Michael Beale and just say, look, ask him, like you say, what is your formation? What is your vision for this team? Where are we going? Why? There's so many questions. And even when he's asked those questions, I think David Edgar and Stevie Clifford, tried their best to try and get somewhere near to what was going on in his head on Sunday, but he kind of, I don't know, just waffled his way through the answers. And to me, I can't remember who said this, but someone said about Michael Beale, Scott Mckay, that he says a lot, but he says nothing. If you get that, kind of get the drift of that. He says an awful lot, but there's no meaning behind it.
Definitely. See, in terms of his tactics, what I've noticed most of all is Gio used to do it in Europe where we would start off as a 4-3-3, and then all of a sudden Lundstrom would jump into a back three, and it would all of a sudden game would be a wee bit more stretched. Tavernier and Borna had a wee bit more room to license up the flanks, etc. When you see Tavernier scoring that goal early second half against Dortmund, that comes for the changing system. But as Scott rightly pointed out earlier on in the podcast, he played 3 different formations in the first half. There's far too many similarities to Beale and Gio in terms of what they're trying to do during the match. The truth is, they don't know what they're trying to do. They're trying to be smart tactically, but they're overcomplicating it, and it's not working. So we need a manager in that's going to come in with a style of play that's going to stick to it. If Plan A doesn't, I would rather Mark Warburton just now. I will get absolute pelters for saying that in the comments, but you know what? See Mark Warburton, at least you know what you had. Right, you might have Rob Kiernan in that playing at the back, but at least you know what you had. You knew we were crap for set pieces, but you knew going forward that we'd a brand of football and a style of play. Something like that. Something that's going to come in, either play a ball on the deck, have a high press, whatever. Just get something on that park that the Rangers fans can start
but
to
see the one thing I kept hearing when he was getting mentioned for the job was he was the tactical mind behind 55. He was doing everything. Gerrard was the face, and Beale was a man in the training ground. Beale was a man in the chalkboard, things like that. That's very well and good, but see if that is the case. Why has he completely changed his mind on that? Why is he? Because the one good thing about that Rangers team was they had Ked. We could argue is probably his best form was that kind of period where Rangers won the league. He was able to kind of be a wide player, but he was also able to kind of be an inverted 10 as well. You had it with Hadji and Roof on the other side. You had a nice balance in midfield with like Jack, Davis, Kamara. At times you would go on to like whoever Aribo would come in, kind of things like Arfield would come in. Why is he completely went off that now? Why is there now no width? Because there was really Rangers haven't had a right winger for about 7 years. But they were able to have inverted 10s, and now he's kind of went to this thing of, we're going to just get away from that area of the park where we were creating a lot of chances, and Kent was obviously hogging the touchline pretty good, and kind of Roof and Hadji would kind of change in that right side. And now he's completely went away from that. So how do you know that? That was a winning formula. He won the league. They won the league playing that level, that style of play. Why has he completely changed his mind on that and went, right, I'm going to play a narrow system with 2 aging fullbacks, bring in these strikers that I'm not really sure if they play together, but they're available. I've wanted them for a long time. I can 100% see like Lammers fitting that 4-3-3 system Danilo fitting that 4-3-3 system. Cantwell would be marvellous in that kind of Rebo role, maybe not as strong as a Rebo, but technically, like, there's a lot of weaknesses in that 4-3-3 system, don't get me wrong, but I think Cifuentes, we've been scheming out for a midfielder like Cifuentes who can do it in both ends. So now you've got the kind of idea, but you don't bring in the players to fit that idea. He knows it's a winning formula, so why change it? That's the bit that mystifies me. And if he's playing an Arab system, fair enough, but it's not working, and it's not worked all season. And this is the time he has to play the way. Now you can argue it might be too predictable, but it needs to be predictable, because right now it's unpredictable. You're either predictable or unpredictable. And when the players that are playing for Rangers don't know what they're doing, what do you expect? Do you know what I mean? Just have a simple method. Do the basics. I know it's a saying we say all the time. There's no basis there. There's no structure. There's no element. This is the perfect time. You've got, and there is an international break. I don't think the likes of Dessers, Lammers, Sima, Danilo are away with their national teams. Get them every day in training. I want to play this system. This is how I want to do it. You've got 10 days. Go and try and work it out. If it doesn't work, he puts his hand up and says, I've got it wrong. We'll go back to this. But try something. Try and just get a shape in place that the players are going to understand and the fans are going to understand. Because right now, the one thing, if results aren't good, you would kind of caveat yourself by saying yes, but it is a good kind of brand to watch. Like, I think a lot, like I keep going back to Lazio. Lazio's had a terrible start to the season, but there's a lot of confidence that Sarri's got it right in terms of the way he wants to play. They go and beat Napoli at the weekend, and everybody's saying, "Oh, you can see what he's trying to do." Do you know what I mean? You can get away with it. You can get away maybe not getting the results if you can see what you're trying to do, and it takes time to gel. But you're not getting the results, and you're not. There's no system. You can't see what he's trying to do, and unless he figures it out, he's going to be out the door, and then it's back to square one. And to say kind of one final thing, Rangers are in a worse place than they were a year ago under Gio, because they're out the Champions League and they're 4 points behind after 4 games. They were only 3 points behind last season, because they had more points in the board after 4 games than they do now. So they went backwards in terms of that. They're out the Champions League and they're behind in the league. They're further behind in the league. So there's kind of my statement on it.
Absolutely right, guys. We're going to start to pull it together because we've gone over an hour now, and I think we could talk about this all night and just keep coming around, because it's just it's been such a disappointment this start of the season. Just such an awful. If you think about the optimism there was before pre-season, the optimism there was going into this season, and it just seems like at the moment it's all coming crashing down around us, and it's not good. It's not good at all, guys. Before we sign off tonight, Scott Mckay from Inside Ibrox says, anything you want to plug, anything you want to tell us where we can find more of your work, and let everyone out there know about your work for Inside Ibrox and Fansided.
I've only been working with them a couple of months now. I started off doing some articles for Scott. I'd sent him a message on SM Media asking if there was any chance that I could get a wee shot at it, and thankfully he gave me the opportunity. Eventually, that's when I noticed the opportunity come up with Fansided. So I try and do like one article a week. I think it's insideibrox.com. I'm still writing up stuff for Scott whenever he asks me to, appearing on the odd podcast, etc., etc. So my stuff's out there. You can go and get a wee read at it.
It's very good stuff, by the way. That's one thing I'll say. I'll give you a bit of praise in the podcast. It's pretty good, by the way. You should check it out, and it helps me as well.
Absolutely, guys. Yeah, it is good. It is very good. And Scott McPike, anything you want to plug? Tell us where we can find you and sort of plug what you do.
Yeah, so you can see us on the Rangers assessment, as Scott rightly points out. There's daily articles. There's a good, obviously the post match reaction will be going out tomorrow night. I've just finished editing it before we come on here actually, and it's quite a grim edit because it's quite depressing, but I trust that there's some good points on it. But yeah, I mean, obviously you can find daily articles like guys like Scott who do a really good job kind of writing for us as well. Some really good kind of pieces coming out in the next couple of weeks as well. Do player ratings after every game, post-match reaction podcasts and things like that. So there's a lot of good stuff on the Rangers assessment. You'll find us on Twitter, or as it's now known, X. You'll find us on YouTube, Facebook. Type in Rangers assessment and you'll be able to find us. And as I say, still on SM Media, Scottish football coverage of all the leagues, every league in Scottish football we cover. So check that out as well. There's a lot going on in the channel. So yeah, check it out.
Absolutely, guys. Yeah, head over and check it out. Follow them on Twitter, X, or whatever on earth it's called these days. So confusing, Elon Musk is. But yeah, thank you to both. Thank you to Scott, and obviously thank you to Scott from Rangers Assessment for stepping in at the last minute to as with Victoria being ill. Thank you very much to both of you for coming on. We've talked a lot about things, and hopefully we'll kind of feel a little bit better getting it off your chest. But the international breaks come at the worst possible time, really. You know, I think another game might have try to help us get this out of our system if possible. But thank you guys for watching. Thank you everyone. Thank you to the live chat for all your comments and questions and donations and likes and everything else. And as always, guys, 2 things I always need you to do for me. Number 1, smash the like, and number 2, always remember we are the people.